When my daughter-in-law told me to leave her house, I smiled instead of crying. It was a small smile, the kind that comes when your heart breaks so deeply that tears no longer find their way out. I remember standing in the doorway that afternoon, holding my old cloth bag, the one my husband had bought for me many years ago. The sun was strong, yet my hands felt cold, like they were holding fear itself. I looked at her face, and I could see frustration in her eyes. Maybe she had too much to carry. Maybe life had made her tired. Or maybe I had become a burden without realizing it. She did not raise her voice. She simply said the words very softly, as if she was trying not to hurt me, but the words still cut through my heart. "Mama, maybe it is better if you go to your sister for some time." I looked at her, and for a moment, I forgot how to speak. My tongue felt heavy. My thoughts shook like leaves in the wind. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. I knew then that this was not a temporary request. This was something she had wanted to say for a long time. My son stood behind her, his eyes lowered. He did not speak. He only shifted his weight from one foot to the other, like a man trapped between love and responsibility, weakness and courage. I wanted him to speak for me. I wanted him to say, "Mama, please stay." But the words never came. So I stood there, with the silence pressing on my chest. In that moment, I remembered the days when I carried him on my back through the dusty roads of our village. I remembered when he cried in the night, and I stayed awake even when my body begged for sleep. I remembered feeding him from the little food we had, pretending I was full so he could eat more. I remembered the years of love, sacrifice, and hope, and now, he could not even lift his head to look at me. Something inside me broke quietly. Not with noise. Not with anger. Just a deep, silent crack. I took a slow breath, looked around the small living room, and tried to hold on to the memories. The wooden table where we used to drink tea. The chair where I sat and told stories to my grandchildren. The corner where I kept my knitting basket. All these little things that made this house feel like home. But in that moment, I realized it was no longer mine. I stepped out of the house. The door closed softly behind me. It was not a loud closing, but it felt final. The kind of final that tells you life has changed forever, and you cannot walk back into what once was. The sky was cloudy. A small wind moved the dry leaves on the ground. I held my cloth bag tightly. I felt like a stranger in a place where I had once belonged. As I walked down the small path leading away from the house, a quiet thought came to me, soft but strong. This is not the end of my story. I did not know what was waiting for me. I did not know where I would sleep that night. I did not know how I would survive. But I knew one thing, I was still alive. And as long as I was alive, I still had some strength left inside me. So I kept walking. I grew up in a small African village where life was simple, but hearts were big. My mother used to say that even if you had only one piece of bread, you should break it into two and share it. She said the world becomes softer when people share. I did not understand it fully as a child, but as I grew older, I learned what she meant. Our village was surrounded by fields and tall trees. When the wind blew, it carried the smell of soil and fresh leaves. The mornings were filled with the sound of birds, and the nights were full of stars. Life was not easy, but it felt honest. When you worked hard, you saw the results. When you loved with your whole heart. I married young, like many women of my time. My husband, Joseph, was a calm and gentle man. He did not speak much, but when he did, his words felt safe. Together, we built a small home at the edge of the village. It was made of mud walls and a tin roof that made loud noises when the rain fell. But inside, it was warm. It was ours. When our son, Daniel, was born, my world changed. I held him in my arms and felt a love so strong that it scared me. I wanted to protect him from every pain in the world. I wanted to give him everything I never had. So I worked harder. I saved every small coin. I cooked, I cleaned, I farmed, and I prayed for his future. As he grew, he became the center of my life. I taught him to walk, to speak, to pray, to respect others, and to dream. When he was old enough, I took him to school every morning, walking several kilometers under the hot sun. Sometimes we had no money for his lunch, so I would pretend I was not hungry and give him mine. He would eat while looking at me with worried eyes, but I always smiled and told him I was fine. Years passed. He grew into a tall young man with a strong spirit and kind eyes. People said he would go far. They said he would make me proud. and I believed them. When he got a job in the city, I felt as if all my prayers had finally reached the heavens. After he married, he asked me to come live with him and his new wife. I hesitated at first. I did not want to intrude on their new life. But he insisted, hugging me and saying, "Mama, you raised me with so much love. Now let me take care of you." I moved into their house with hope in my heart. I thought I would spend my old age peacefully, surrounded by family, love, and laughter. In the beginning, everything was gentle. My daughter-in-law, Amina, welcomed me with a warm smile. She cooked for me. She asked me about my childhood stories. We sat together in the evenings, drinking tea while the children played nearby. I felt like I had found another daughter, but slowly, very slowly, things began to change. It began with small looks, small sighs, small silences. Little things that most people would ignore. But my old heart could feel the shift. The warmth in her voice cooled. The smiles faded. She became distant, as if my presence was a weight she did not want to carry. I tried to help around the house. I cooked. I cleaned. I watched the children so she could rest. But sometimes she would stop me gently and say, "Mama, please sit. I can do it." I thought she was being kind, but later I realized she did not want me to touch anything. I still loved her. I still wanted peace. So I stayed quiet, but silence has a way of growing, and soon it started to fill the space between us. The real tension began on small days, the kind of days that seem ordinary, but carry hidden cracks. One morning, I woke up early to prepare breakfast. I wanted to surprise the family. I cooked porridge the way my mother taught me, warm and thick. When Amina came to the kitchen, she stopped at the doorway. She looked at the pots, then at me. "Mama." I had planned to make something else. I smiled gently. "I thought I could help today." She nodded, but her eyes looked disappointed. She collected the pots, placed them aside, and began to cook something different. I stood there quietly, feeling my hands tremble. I sat down in the corner, trying not to cry. It was such a small thing, yet it hurt in a way I could not explain. Another time, I washed the children's clothes and hung them outside. When she saw them, she frowned again. "Mama, I like to wash them in a different way. Please do not do it next time." I apologized. She did not shout. She did not insult me. But the soft disapproval in her voice was enough to make me feel unwelcome. The children noticed too. They would play near me, but sometimes they looked confused when their mother called them away. I could feel the space around me shrinking. My son, Daniel, was a quiet man. He worked long hours in the city. When he came home, he was tired. I did not want to put more weight on him, so I rarely told him how I felt. Sometimes he would sit next to me and ask, "Mama, are you okay?" I would smile and say, "Yes, my son. I am fine." But inside, a storm was growing. One evening, I was sitting in the living room when I heard them talking in the kitchen. Amina whispered, "I feel uncomfortable, Daniel. I need space. I need our house to be ours." He replied softly, "She is my mother. Where will she go?" A long silence followed, and I could almost hear the fear in my son's breathing. He was torn. I could sense it every day. He loved me, but he also wanted peace in his marriage. And I, without wanting to, had become the reason for their tension. The next morning, Amina avoided looking at me. The house became quieter. The air felt heavy. Even the walls seemed to listen. One day, I accidentally dropped a glass while washing dishes. It shattered loudly on the floor. I bent down quickly, afraid of the sound. My heart raced as if I had committed something terrible. Amina came running. She looked at the broken glass, then at me. Her voice was calm, but her words were sharp like hidden knives. "Mama, please, this is becoming too much." I whispered, "I am sorry." She did not reply. She simply cleaned the glass and walked away. That night, I lay awake on my small bed. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the distant noise of cars outside. My chest felt tight. I wondered if growing old meant becoming invisible. I wondered if my presence had become a burden. I remembered my mother's words, "When a person's heart becomes heavy, their feet begin to look for new land." Maybe my heart had become too heavy for their house. The final moment came on a rainy afternoon. The sky was dark, and the sound of rain hitting the roof felt like thousands of tiny drums. I was sitting on the porch, watching the water run down the street. Rain always made me feel peaceful. But that day, peace stayed far away. Amina came outside slowly. She stood next to me, holding her arms close to her body. For a long moment, she said nothing. The rain filled the silence, then she breathed out and said, "Mama, maybe it is better if you stay with your sister for some time." The words floated in the air for a moment before settling in my heart like stones. I looked at her. She did not look angry. She looked tired. Too tired to carry one more thing. And perhaps, in her eyes, that thing was me. I wanted to speak, but my throat felt tight. She continued, her voice soft, "I need time. I need space. I am trying, but it is difficult. Please try to understand." Understand? Yes, I understood. I understood the feeling of wanting your own space. I understood the pressure of trying to manage a home, children, marriage. I understood that sometimes, people break silently, but the part that hurt was realizing that I was the piece that needed to be removed so her life could feel balanced again. I nodded slowly. My son arrived a few minutes later. He already knew. He looked at me with eyes full of guilt. He reached out to touch my shoulder, but his hand hung in the air uncertainly. "Mama, maybe just for a while," he whispered. I smiled at him. A small, sad smile. "Do not worry, my son. I understand." But in truth, I was breaking inside. I walked to my small room. I folded my clothes. I picked up the old cloth bag my husband had bought. I touched the walls gently with my fingertips. Then I sat on the bed and took one long breath. It was strange how a life full of memories could fit into one bag. When I stepped outside the house, the rain had slowed. The ground was wet, and the air smelled fresh. But inside me, a storm still raged. I turned around for one last look. The house that had once felt like home now felt distant. My son stood in the doorway. Amina stood behind him, her eyes on the floor. The children peeked from behind her, their faces curious and confused. I raised my hand to wave. It trembled slightly. No one moved for a moment. Then my son lifted his hand weakly. My heart broke quietly. Then the door closed softly, but it felt final. I walked slowly along the muddy road, not sure where I was going. My sister lived many miles away. I did not have money for transport. But my feet kept moving, as if they knew the way even when my mind did not. By the time the rain stopped, my clothes were soaked. A small chill ran through my bones. I felt lightheaded, but I kept walking. A woman from the neighborhood saw me and called out, "Mama, where are you going in this rain?" I smiled and said, "Just taking a walk." She offered me shelter, but I gently refused. I did not want anyone to know. I did not want pity. I wanted space to breathe, space to think. As I walked further, I passed places filled with memories. The market where I once bought vegetables with my grandchildren. The school where I waited at the gate. The small shop where Daniel used to run for sweets as a child. Every corner whispered memories, and every memory pulled at my heart. By evening, I reached the small church at the end of the road. It was closed, but there was a wooden bench outside. I sat there, holding my bag close. The sky was turning orange, and the air was cool. For the first time since leaving the house, I let my tears fall. They were not loud tears. They were the quiet kind, the kind that slipped down your cheeks without shaking your body. They carried sadness, exhaustion, and a pain so old that it felt familiar. As night approached, an old man who worked at the church came by. He recognized me. "Mama, why are you sitting here alone?" I wiped my tears quickly. "I am just resting." He looked at my bag. "Are you traveling?" I nodded. "Yes. I am going to my sister." He sat beside me for a moment. He did not ask questions. He simply said, "Sometimes God closes a door because He wants us to walk through another one." I did not fully understand at that moment, but his words rested in my heart like a soft blanket. He opened the church for me that night. He made tea for me and let me sleep on a small wooden bench. The kindness of that night reminded me that even when one home pushes you away, the world still has gentle corners. The next morning, he found someone traveling in the direction of my sister's village and asked them to take me along. I thanked him with all my heart. When I reached my sister's home, she held me tightly. She did not ask why I came without warning. She did not ask what happened. She simply said, "You are home. Rest now." And for the first time in a long time, I let myself rest. Days turned into weeks. My sister's home became a place where my heart slowly healed. She made me tea every morning. I watched the sunrise from her porch. I sat under the big mango tree behind her house, listening to the sound of the wind through the leaves. Slowly, I began to feel alive again. I started helping in the community. I taught children how to read. I told stories to the elders. I helped women weave baskets and cook meals for gatherings. My hands found purpose again. My heart found warmth again. People began calling me Mama of the village. They said I had a gentle voice. They said my presence made them feel safe. I realized then that freedom sometimes begins when you lose everything you once held on to. 1 year passed before my son came to see me. He arrived one afternoon, his clothes dusty from travel, his face tired. When I saw him standing at the gate, my heart jumped. I walked slowly toward him. He looked at me with eyes full of regret. "Mama, I am sorry." I touched his cheek gently. "My son, life teaches us in different ways. Do not carry pain in your heart." "I am fine." He shook his head, tears filling his eyes. I should have stopped it. I should have spoken up. I should have protected you. I held his hand. "You were trying to protect your family. I understand. And sometimes, separation is not punishment. It is guidance." We sat together under the mango tree. He rested his head on my shoulder like he used to as a boy. I told him I forgave him long ago. I told him I carried no anger. He asked me to come back with him. I smiled softly and said, "My home is here now. But you can visit me anytime." He nodded slowly. I saw peace settle in his eyes. As the sun began to set, I looked at the sky and felt a gentle strength inside me, a strength I did not know I had. Life had taken me through sorrow, but it also gave me freedom, freedom to breathe, freedom to rest, freedom to live my own days with dignity. And I learned something important. Sometimes, the people we love push us away. Not because they hate us, but because they are fighting their own battles. And sometimes, walking away is not the end. It is the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where we find peace. A chapter where we find ourselves again. A chapter where our hearts learn to grow, even in the quietest corners of life. And that is how I, an old African grandmother, fought for my freedom, not with anger, not with loud words, but with quiet strength, gentle steps, and a heart that refused to stop loving.